Hail and well met, everybody. Welcome to Geek, Thyself, a show by nerds, for nerds,
who love geeking out over random facts and esoteric trivia. My name is Heather.
I'm Russell.
And we'll be your hosts for this journey through the wondrous land of information.
Hi guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Geek Thyself. I don't know why my voice went really high there, but hi.
Hi everyone.
This week we are going to be dialing it back a little bit, and we're going to be talking about Avatar, the Last Airbender, not the James Cameron film, and not the images you use on Twitter and Facebook. There's a lot of different
those
avatars.
things. There are, but yeah, specifically we're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was a cartoon put out by Nickelodeon.
Yes.
Let's see, back in...
It started in 2005 and was and concluded in 2008. Mm-hmm. So it's been concluded for over 10 years.
Good Lord.
And next year it'll have been 15 years since it started.
Oh, that makes me feel so old. I was in college when Avatar started.
I would
Don't
have
say
been
it.
10. I would have been 10. How does that make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Old.
Yes. It also had a follow-on show called The Legend of Korra, which we are not going to touch on too much, but it definitely followed on. And that was released between 2012 and 2014. So there was a bit of a gap between it. There was also a random blip, and something supposedly exists in between those two. There was also a movie produced by M. Night Shyamalan called The Last Airbender during that time.
So bad.
It might be, but it exists. And we have to talk about it, at least briefly, even if we'd rather not. Okay. So, the setting for Avatar is a world which is kind of like our own, but technology is only just starting to become a thing for certain elements of the world. But in addition to all of that, there are benders, which is an interesting term, but essentially what that means is depending on your birth parents and where your location is, it depends on whether you could be born with the ability to manipulate one of the four core elements of the world, which is fire, air, earth, and water. And I don't think I did that in the right order. Actually, no, I think I did. Thinking about it. So, there's a chance that if you were born in, say, the Earth Kingdom, you could be born with the power to manipulate Earth and become an Earthbender, which obviously took more training and stuff. But it wasn't everyone, and for some elements, it was more secluded just because of the smaller populations for those places.
Right.
Because there were four main areas where these kind of people convened, with there being four air temples throughout the world, with like north, east, south, and west. The Fire Nation, which was fairly large itself, like as a centralized place. The Water Nations, which were towards the North and South Pole, and then the Earth Kingdom, which was pretty much the rest of the world. It was the largest of the elements, which is what I mean in regards to depending on which nation you were born in, depends on how many of those bending practices you'd see. It was, the world was also heavily tied with the spirit world, which is where the Avatar comes in. The Avatar is a bridge between the spirit world and the mortal world, and also has the ability to master all four of the elements, which is the only person who could do it. You were only ever born with one, unless you were this person, the Avatar, who kept being reborn, who could learn to master all four of those elements.
Yeah, which
which
didn't happen regularly. And just for anyone who's wondering, I don't know as much about Avatar: The Last Airbender as Russ, so he's taken point on this episode.
yes, a little bit. So that's the basic rundown. While we're mentioning that, how far did you get into the series, if
I
you can remember?
think I finished the first season. I remember them. I remember seeing them going to the Earth Kingdom.
Okay, so
And
you would have been a little bit into season 2.
yes, and
I
I
think.
I saw all of the stuff where they met the second Water Kingdom because I know
The Northern Water Tribe.
yes
Yeah.
because they had come from the Southern Water Tribe.
Yes.
The two siblings whose names I just blanked on. Oh
Sakura and
God,
Katara.
thank you. Yes,
I wasn't sure which one.
my
You
my
meant
brain just blanked on the names for a second.
there. That's totally fine. So essentially, that is something that's always been established. Every time the Avatar dies, they are reborn into the next element in the cycle, which is why that it manages to get it in the right order. Fire goes into air, air then goes into water, water goes into earth, and earth back into fire. And that's a rotating, ever constant thing. But the show's basic premise is that the Fire Nation declared war on the world.
Well,
'Cause-
specifically, one particular ruler decided he was going to, and then everything
Yes.
went to hell.
Yes, Fire Lord Sozin decided that the Fire Nation wasn't big enough and they wanted more. So they declared war with the Avatar at the time, Avatar Roku, being a firebender, couldn't stop and unfortunately died during that. He said the Avatar was reborn as an airbender, but due to being told too early of what their nature was, they reacted badly and got caught in a situation which meant that they were frozen in ice for 100 years. Which means that to the rest of the world, the Avatar had vanished. Which,
It wasn't good.
no.
Oh, and one thing that is important to note also is that even though the person who ends up being the Avatar is always random, it just depends on where they get reincarnated, it does cycle through the different nations. So, it from the Fire Nation, the next nation in the cycle was the Air Nation, and that's why
The show is called Avatar: The Last Airbender.
exactly.
Because while this war was going on, a lot of casualties were had on all of the elements, but the air nomads, which is what they went by, were always the smallest and least numbered of the four nations. So by the time Aang, who is the main protagonist of the show and is the Avatar, comes out of the ice, or is freed from the ice by Sakura and Katara, they are now the last one. There aren't any more that he can find, which is a massive shock to him, of course, because well, it just would be, and spends quite a lot of the show dealing with more adult themes than you perhaps give credit for a kid show. Which is one of the reasons that I adored the show, both as a kid and as an adult. I've rewatched it a few times. I rewatched it actually for 2018 for the 10-year anniversary of the end of the show. It came back out on Blu-ray, so released in HD, and so of course I had to get it. So I got that, and then that's when I sort of rewatched it and fell in love with the show again. Okay, so yeah. There are 3 books, as we talked about, and each one focuses on Aang trying to learn the next element within those sort of cycles, which follows water, earth, and then fire.
Yes.
He's also under a time pressure for this because he is told, because as where, as we mentioned, the spirit world is connected through the avatar, so they have more chance to get spirit help, and they are contacted by their previous avatar to say that they have a little under 6 months to be ready to stop the Fire Lord, which is the person who is in charge of the Fire Nation.
Right, who is no longer
Otherwise,
Sozin, but one of his
no.
descendants.
Yes, Ozai now. But the war continued on throughout that line, and with the power of that comment, it were a comet. Sorry, I missed a bit. At the end of the 6 months, a comet which would come back around to the Earth, and that would amplify the Fire Nation's ability to finally end the war in their favor. So, Aang is 12, has very little knowledge of this new world, and has to find 3 teachers to teach him the 3 remaining elements, because he's already extremely proficient in airbending at this point. But he has to find teachers for those within 6 months. Something that other avatars didn't need. They spent sometimes decades mastering these elements. So
Yeah, and he doesn't have that much time.
no, he doesn't. So already from the start, there's a great story to follow, and what was always nice about the show is that it had it all planned out in the fact that there were going to be 3 books. The story would follow from that point until the conclusion, which I'm obviously not going to spoil because spoilers. So it followed that story and didn't try to pad it past that point. So
No,
it had
they had
a
it
great,
very planned out.
yes, they had a great conclusion where everything made sense, and you could tell that forethought had been put into it. Okay. So now that we've sort of covered the main basis of the show, I'm going to bring up a little bit of trivia for the show, because it's one of my favourite little things about the show, for one thing.
Okay.
Is that all of the different bending styles, which, like, as in fire bending and earth bending, air bending and water bending, are based on worldly martial arts. So within the sort of styles of the movement, there's distinct differences between them all, with them coming from different styles of martial arts, and there's a big old list which I have somewhere.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't specifically remember which nations used which style, but it is interesting if you watch the show. It's very cool because you can see the difference between the way that the benders move. So the way the airbenders move is very different from how the firebenders move, is different from how the earthbenders move. And it's because each of them moves according to the type of element that they control.
Yeah. Okay. For waterbending, it's a style of Tai Chi, which is specifically called the Yang style, which is a Chinese martial art that features very slow and elegant movements, which, if you think about it, is very similar to how water would move. So
Yes.
it kind of flows into their body movement in that way. With earthbending, it's a style of kung fu called Hung Gar, which features heavily rooted stances and strong kicks and punches. So it's essentially you're a resolute object with taking smaller but more powerful movements to direct the earth as a solid but powerful object.
That makes sense.
With firebending, it's a different style of kung fu with northern Shaolin. So with that, it's more a tactical, fast, and energetic martial art. Again, going into how fire can be powerful, fast, and can spread very quickly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense as well.
Finally, with airbending, it's oh, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's Baguaz. Oh, so it's Bagua Xiang style of martial arts.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's how it's said, but it's Baguazhang.
Oh, okay. I see. I'm looking stuff up. I see Bagua.
Yeah, Bagua and then Zhang, I think. Yes, and that's called circle walking, which is again, it's a constant movement like the air.
Yeah, I think
itself has.
I think it might be Bagua Zhang.
Okay, but
Something like that.
I'm sorry for butchering that because I absolutely did. And again, dynamic footwork, throws, and hand techniques. And again, energetic but in a different way than fire is. It's more that it's constant movement, not necessarily strong, erratic movement like the air would have.
Right. That makes sense actually because it's like Aang is constantly moving. He never stops moving when he's fighting.
Yeah, which is why he struggles so much learning earthbending, because the whole point is that you're resolute. You're...
Yeah. Well, and
which is
one thing... Oh, go ahead.
No, you carry on.
I was just going to say, that's one thing I do remember from the series is them talking about how it's always hardest for the Avatar to learn the element that is his complete opposite.
Yeah, the direct opposite. Yeah.
They're so different. It's easiest for them to learn the next one in the cycle. So in the cycle goes fire, air, water, earth. And so since Aang is air, his easiest one to learn is water. So that's where he goes first, is to learn water.
Yeah. And then most avatars follow the cycle for how they learn. Not all of them. But this was also done in the show mainly because, as far as everyone knew, every firebender who could teach Aang would not teach Aang. Obviously, throughout the show, it's shown that not every firebender agrees with what the Fire Nation is doing, as people are, but it's how it's portrayed at the start. So water became quite a natural thing, which again causes some tension between Katara, who is also a waterbender, in the show, because they've been trying to get better at this their whole life, and Aang has been out of the ice 2 days and is already up to their same level and surpassing them.
But that's kind of part of what being the Avatar is that you're supposed to be able to pick these things up really quickly. It's just part of you.
Yes. Doesn't make it difficult for people who struggle harder to get those same results. But that's again another element of the show element of the show that I enjoy, is that they don't shy away from talking about these kind of things. Like I said, it's a very adult show, which almost hides behind its childlike appearance.
I'd agree.
There's very adult themes. There's very compelling scenes. It's very difficult to explain too much about it without getting too much into spoilers. But that's the general concept. A lot of research went into creating the bending art styles and how they interact with each other, and about how those struggles would come about. Now that we've sort of talked about the show's plot as far as we can and the bending elements, I think now's a fairly good time to go to our break.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the mid-roll. You know, everyone's favorite part, it's the ads.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off talking about World Anvil, like we always do. World Anvil's an amazing campaign management software and website. It's worldanvil.com. You can manage your world, whether you're writing a story or whether you're running a D&D game for your friends and you want to be able to flesh out your world more so that you can have the information available for them. Or if you're an author and you want your audience and your readers to be able to see the world the way you see it, or even just for yourself to kind of get everything organized before you start, it's an amazing resource. It's worldanvil.com. I can't talk up them enough. They're just amazing. And I definitely recommend you go check it out.
Mm-hmm. Also supporting the network are Die Hard Dice. Die Hard Dice are the producers of fine, beautiful polymer dice and metal dice, which is really their sort of big thing that they focus on. They created all of their own molds for their dice, so when you see them, they're the people who actually put time into creating them. They have a Spellbinder series for them where they combine multiple different colours along with other beautiful like single colour designs that they have. They release things as often as they can, always posting sneak peeks for things. They just released their Scroll of Rolling like within the last month. It's still gorgeous. It's still an amazing, just an amazing tool for like travel DMs or travel players, because you don't have to worry about how much can you fit into your messenger bag this week, because it rolls up into a scroll, so it sits in there nicely. It's practical and they look gorgeous. If you want to check out any of their products, you can go to dieharddice.com. If you find anything you like, you could use the code Geek Thyself to get 15% off your first or next order. That's 15%. And yeah, if you want to roll with the best, feel free to check out dieharddice.com.
That's right. And please don't forget to go to nerdsmith.org and check out all of the amazing shows we have over there. You know, shows like Plot Hunters and Shenanigans. And who do you think we should mention, Russ?
Oh, who should we mention? We should mention DDM and Champions of the Earth and In Vain. Oh, this Shenanigans. There's a lot of there's a lot of shows. WAND Radio, WAND Radio.
Yes.
I should say it correctly. There's so much on the network. You will find your own little corner of what you enjoy watching, listening to, interacting with. If it's a stream, just check it out. You might find something you like.
Definitely. That's nerdsmith.org.
Okay. Okay, also, we'll mention it again. While we are past the pre-orders for our first ever Pride pin, which features a lovely little dragon egg and the 7 colours of the Pride rainbow, it's still showing our support for LGBTQA plus members, whether we are those ourselves, like many of us are on the network, or we are just standing with you as people. The pin is also gorgeous. If you want to check it out, you still can. You can still go to nerdsmith.org/pride and get yourself a pin. They're gorgeous. If you want to check it out, feel free. Right, so now that we've talked about those sort of main elements, something that I've just checked because I was interested in how long they'd had this concept. They started getting the concept for the show in early 2001. So they spent a good 4 years developing the story before actually releasing any of the episodes that we eventually saw, and you can really tell because there's not really an episode in Avatar that feels like it's out of place.
No, it's
There's
very
certainly
well thought
episodes-
through.
Yeah, there are certainly episodes that maybe are lower stakes for sure, but even that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. And honestly, something that I love about the show is it gets better as you go through. That's not to say that the first season or first book, as they typically call it, is bad, but by the end, like by the time you're in the second and third book, it just keeps getting better, and it doesn't really hit a point where it feels like it dips, because as the show gets older, it again goes into more adult themes, goes into exploring more interesting questions for an audience that is growing up.
Yeah, well, and there's more going on in the world of the Avatar also. So there's a lot more things to explore, and you get to meet a lot of new fun characters. One fun little fact, too, is that the series was actually pitched to Nickelodeon 2 weeks after their initial ideas that they thought up and the initial concept that they developed. So the producers over at Nickelodeon realized that it was such a good idea right away.
And to be fair, that's kind of cool that they were as okay to hold off on it, like going into production right away, because like that's a lot of pressure for like a studio to like bank on something and then have to wait 4 years for it to come out. Obviously, it works out in the end, but that's still got to be a bit nerve-wracking for them to go, oh yeah, no, we have this idea. How long have you had it? 2 weeks. Oh, but it's still really good. We still want to be a part of it because other people want to be a part. Like, you know, it's just.
No, I agree.
Something else that has come about recently, which I actually forgot to mention earlier, is that in September 2018, again in the 10-year anniversary of the show's finale, Netflix announced that they are releasing a live-action remake of the show.
Yes, which everyone's nervous about.
Cautiously optimistic. It does include the original creators, which is something that is good.
Yes.
But we have been burnt on this before. Again, in 2010, when the live-action film of Avatar: The Last Airbender came out. It was intended to be the first of a trilogy of films, like there are 3 books in the series.
Yes.
But in the past decade, there have been rumours of it coming out, rumours of it being worked on. Right now, it seems like it is currently laying to rest, which
is probably best.
Yeah, without being too harsh on it, is probably best.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't seen it, or hasn't really heard about it, the reason for that is likely the fact that it was overall considered not great.
No, but the first issue you run into is cramming 20 full-length episodes of a show into an hour-and-a-half movie.
Yeah, they shouldn't have tried to do that, because basically they tried to cram an entire season into a single movie, which is only 2.5 hours, and the full season was 20 episodes, which each episode was a 30-minute episode. So they tried to turn 10 hours of material into a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah. The thing that I would have maybe preferred they do is make a film set in the Avatar's universe instead of trying to remake the story we were already told better. I feel like that would have gone over better with people, because why would we want to watch a rushed version of the drawn-out, really good story we already got? That's just my opinion on it as in general. Like, I don't have an issue with there being other films made, but I don't think making a film about the show is such a good idea. Like, hey, if you wanted to make a film about Toph before they encountered Aang and that kind of thing, that could be an interesting story to tell, because it's not something we saw. If you want to focus on Zuko, who is one of the main antagonists of the show, who has been sent to search for the Avatar, which is essentially a fruitless quest by his father, because at this point no one had seen the Avatar in 100 years. Everyone just assumed that they were not around. So it was never intended that they could actually find them, but then they showed back up, and that's became a driving factor for them. But like focusing on their childhood, on their development, could have been really interesting. I just feel like they went about it just the wrong way, which
Yeah, well, I mean, that was one factor, like trying to cram so much into such a short time frame and then leaving out a lot that really was
yes,
necessary to maintain the feel of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The other problem is all of the controversy regarding their casting.
yes. Now you mention it, I remember this being an issue. Within the show, there is very much ethnic cultures relating to some of the not some of the elements with how they connect, like the Fire Nation is inspired mainly by Chinese and Japanese settings and buildings and cultures. Is at least I'm pretty sure that's the case. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Yeah. So they've taken light inspiration from those kind of settings and those locations and putting them into these different parts of the world. The issue is that all of the Fire Nation people in the film were white for the most part.
Yes. Well, and not only that, but just I'd have to double check, but I think all three kids that they hired to be the main three characters were of non-Asian descent.
Yes. Which didn't fit with the narrative.
No.
Or didn't fit with the story we'd already been told. And it's not necessarily a problem to change it. It's when you don't change the names, which are very culturally appropriate, and then try and do it. Like, I'm not saying you can't change some people to fit a scene better, but if you're only just changing the colour of their skin, it felt weird. It felt a little disingenuous, which I think a lot of people had an issue with.
Well, and it's not actually just that, at least not for those of us that are people of color.
Yes, which you'll have more experience with than I do, obviously.
Yeah. So for anyone out there who isn't aware from previous episodes, I'm half Japanese. I happen to appear more white to most people.
Yes.
But I am half Japanese. And for a lot of us that are Asian American, or just specifically Asian American because it's more of an American movie issue.
Yes.
There's a lot of whitewashing that happens in Hollywood. There's a lot of it. And you see it all over the place. You know, a great example that even just came out not that long ago is the movie Aloha or Hawaii, whatever it was. The one with Emma Roberts and is that the right person?
I don't know. Let's have a look at this film because I've not actually heard of this, so I'm kind of interested. Ohana.
Oh, is that what they ended up calling it?
Let's have a look.
Honestly,
Ohana.
I blanked out the whole thing. I just didn't even want to talk about it. It was
No,
not
that's
great,
right.
but
That's something to do with Lilo and Stitch, which sounded familiar.
no, I'm fairly certain it was either Aloha or yeah, it was Aloha. So
film.
in Aloha,
Mm-hmm.
Emma Stone, that's what it is.
Emma Stone. Okay.
It starred Emma Stone and Bradley Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Emma Stone was supposed to be playing a character who was of Asian descent.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who doesn't know who Emma Stone is, she's extremely Caucasian.
Very much so. I also remember this issue coming up with the Ghost in the Shell live action release.
Yes.
In that Scarlett Johansson or Johansson played. I wish I knew the character's name. I never saw Ghost in the Shell, but I know that again it was a case of whitewashing the character.
Yeah. So for anyone who isn't familiar with the term, whitewashing is basically when a character who is very obviously in the original work an ethnicity that isn't white ends up getting portrayed by a white actor in the movie. And it happens a lot. I don't remember the Major's last name in Ghost in the Shell at the moment, but yeah,
it also happened there, yeah.
It happened there as well, yeah. And it's something that continues to happen constantly. And the problem is the argument that continues to be given every single time is that, at least all the times I've ever heard of it coming up, the argument that always gets presented most strongly is, well, we couldn't find an Asian actor to do it. We couldn't find an Asian actor that was right for the part. We couldn't find an Asian actor that was good enough. Here's the thing. That's completely just trash.
Yes.
What it often translates to is we wanted a bigger name. And people don't know the Asian actors, but they don't know the Asian actors because they never get hired. Yes. And then the other thing is, too, in the case of Avatar: The Last Airbender, it wasn't just Asian Americans that were passed over for any of these positions in the show. It was also native peoples, because the two water tribes in the north and south are based off of more native tribes like the Inuit, who are...
Yes. I wasn't sure what the correct term was. I wasn't sure what the correct term was, but thank you.
Yeah. And so that's another issue too, and it happens to every non-white group of actors and actresses in media, is the characters get whitewashed. It actually just recently is happening too with some of the Final Fantasy characters. For the newest Final Fantasy that's coming out. I'm blanking
is this
on
the
his
remake?
Yeah, it's like the newest one that's coming out, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but there was an African-American character who in previous iterations was very clearly portrayed as African-American, and then in the newest imagery that's come out, he's a lot paler. Not necessarily full-on like white, but he's definitely a lot paler, and instead of having dark brown eyes like he had in some of the previous games, he now has like bluish green eyes, and his hair is now looking more straightened.
Okay.
So they might be going for multi-ethnic, which is okay, except why did you have to do that if the character had already been established as of African descent? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That makes sense.
And
I could definitely see why that would be infuriating. Yes, and for the
POC community, for those of us who identify as people of color, that was a major problem with Avatar: The Last Airbender. The fact that it was...
Okay, sorry, just so we're not confusing. The Last Airbender, they couldn't actually call it Avatar because of the film Avatar that came out.
That's true.
So it was just called The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
The show does a great job of representation, at least in my opinion.
The cartoon does a great job. They did their research. They portrayed... Yes. They took inspiration from different aspects of different Asian cultures, and they did it well.
Yes.
But the movie did not.
Yes. And I was just making sure that we were differentiating that enough, that's all. Because they're very similar names.
Yes, that's true. It gets confusing because all of the names were similar. But yeah, the show, Avatar: The Last Airbender, did a great job. They paid homage to Asian culture, but they tweaked it. They combined different aspects of all of it. They did a really good job of portraying it well. and
Yes.
being respectful. Whereas the movie, The Last Airbender, the whitewashing upset a lot of the POC community because it was just another time where it wasn't necessary. Well, and
Yeah.
especially when you consider the fact that even if they couldn't find someone who quite fit the bill here in America, you have an entire continent called Asia. Go
Yes.
look.
That's fair. Okay. Yes, that's definitely. It's a bit difficult to skirt around that one. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can definitely see why that's frustrating. So yeah, the movie itself had issues with story, issues with character, and overall the adaptation was only okay. And for a show that was as good as it was, only okay really didn't cut it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia. So for the film,
Yes.
this is verbatim from Wikipedia. I'm quoting. The film was universally panned for its writing, acting, whitewashed cast, and Shyamalan's direction. It earned a 6% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, as well as 5 Razzies at the 31st Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Picture.
Okay, just so people understand what the Razzies is. The Razzies is a kind of joke award ceremony which highlights the worst of the worst films during that year. So to win 5 Razzies, I'm sure some people would see it as a great achievement, but it doesn't bode well for your picture.
No, it's not a good thing. And I had forgotten about the acting too. That was one thing. A lot of people didn't like the acting. So, like, the argument that they couldn't find kid actors that were Asian that were good enough to play the 3 roles. But then everyone hated the acting of the 3 kids that were the main characters.
The main issue with Aang's character within the film is that they hired a professional fighter, like somebody who could perform the actions professionally, but they were not an actor. Which kind of had that disconnect that, yeah, the times when the actions were needed to look good, but the rest of the time it was a bit bland. Which isn't necessarily their fault. They weren't an actor. They were a martial artist. But it didn't help the production, is the point.
Yes, I would again like to point to Asia, where the martial arts they were using originated, and there's millions of children, some of whom can act. Sorry, this is one of those things that where I'm like, this really bugs me when people do this, especially when the excuse is we couldn't find someone that was good enough to do it, and I'm like, have you looked?
Yeah, no, it's totally fair to have these kind of feelings about this. You don't need to apologize for it.
No. Oh, I will say, Dev Patel played Zuko.
Dev
was
Patel
good.
did well. Dev Patel had
was
good
good.
moments. He had good moments.
Yes,
But
he did a good job with what he was given.
Yeah, the direction wasn't the best.
No.
But he did at least not even marginally. He put in as good a performance as he could with what he had to work with.
Dev Patel did the best job he could with what he was handed. The fact that he was handed junk is not his fault.
That's fair.
Also, he's one of the only actually ethnic people of color in the entire movie.
Within the production, yes. So yes, based on all of that, yeah, he did much better than what could be expected with what he was handed. Yes, I think that's a fair way of saying it.
And one thing that does make me hopeful for the live action remake they're coming out with is the fact that the original creators are involved, and they've specifically said that they intend to do it in a culturally appropriate and non-whitewashed way. I'm like, good.
Yes. So yeah. So hopefully, like you said, it will be good. I wonder what kind of direction they're going to go with it, actually. There's a lot of speculation about it. I'm trying to stay away from it because I just want to sort of go in as fresh as possible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And before then, you'll have to actually finish the show, which you should definitely do.
Yeah, I mean, I know overall what happens.
Yes.
Like, I know the overall plot points, the big ones, but yes, I have not actually finished watching the show. I got I got partway through all the Airbender one. I know I saw him. Okay, without giving too many spoilers, I saw him on the island that had all of the Earth benders on it. That was floating in the ocean. I saw him there, and I remember him leaving there.
Yes. That's kind of where you remember.
Yeah, I think that might be the. I think I got a little further than that, but not by much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I would recommend watching it. I think the show is definitely worth your time if you can find any time, though, Heather. That is your big problem.
Yes.
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 If you can ever find time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
While we did just discuss something that's very important, we maybe could end the episode on a slightly lighter note with a light-hearted question.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
The question is, what is your personal favourite element, and which element would you like to control if you were given a choice?
That is a very good question. Okay. I think it would depend
Yeah, and what?
how well I can manipulate the element. Like, if I could manipulate air as well as Aang does.
You could with the appropriate training. So yeah, that's
True.
the basic way. Like, you have this bending power. You can be as good or as not good as you put into it, essentially.
Okay. Then I think in those circumstances, in our world, like in an everyday
Yeah.
setting here, if I could pick an element, I would probably go with air, because then I could fly and not
Yeah.
have to pay for gas or deal with traffic again.
Yeah, that's kind of where I kind of thought about it, because obviously flying is fun. Being able to be doing that would be interesting. Obviously, like, there are ways of manipulating that with Earth. I guess you could sort of move along the Earth as, like, rocks and stuff, or move through it, which again could be useful. I feel like if I had the option, it would be air. If I was given one based on my kind of the way my sort of like body frame is, like, because like there's a sort of frame that certain benders have. I feel like my frame better fits an earthbender, which because I'm resolute, I'm difficult to knock down. Like not even like that. Like, I have a fairly good core, like you. That kind of thing. I feel like if I was given one based on that kind of thing, it would be Earth, but air would be my choice as well.
Okay, yeah, I feel like air would be my choice, like, in this world, just because of the benefits of being able to go everywhere and fly. I do think, I feel like if I was given an element, I would probably be water, just because of the way my personality is. I'm very go with the flow for the most part, which obviously fits with water. But also, there's the fact that most of the time I think I'm pretty calm and gentle and not causing a lot of problems. But then every once in a while, if the right situation
Yeah.
happens, I am going to smash into you and get you out of my face.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like, the water is a cruel mistress. Don't underestimate it. Just because it's calm right now doesn't mean it always will be.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, I could definitely see that. That's a fun visual as well. You just smashing into things with water. Yeah, so obviously for this kind of like setting, air feels like the best choice because fire, while fire is useful, you wouldn't really feel the need. Like if you were the only element bender, you wouldn't need fire like to defend yourself from other benders or like attack. Like so, air just feels like the best in that kind of contained way. So yeah, I definitely agree. On that very roller coaster heavy episode, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. If you guys haven't seen Avatar, I highly recommend it. Each episode is about 23 minutes, roughly. You don't need to rush it. Just take it as you go. If you're anything like interested in this kind of thing, I personally think you'd like it because obviously Heather hasn't seen it all. But
right.
if you do end up watching it, let me know what you think because it's a really cool show, and let us know if you watch the live action Netflix series as well. If you've already seen Avatar when that comes out.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. In the meantime, we will be back next week with more fun topics, and we will talk to you then. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Geek Thyself. Don't forget to check out all the other amazing content on the Nerdsmith Network. If you have any questions for either of us, you can get in contact with us on Twitter at geek_thyself.
You can also email us at geekthyself@nerdsmith.org. And please don't forget to go to iTunes and leave us a review, or also go anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
We'll be back next week with another informative and fun episode.
And until then, don't forget to geek thyself.
You wake up startled in the middle of the night, convinced that there's something out there in the darkness. Your brain tells you that there's nothing to be afraid of. Unfortunately, your brain is dead wrong. If you love the mix of horror, mystery, and comedy in shows like Buffy, Ash vs. the Evil Dead, or Supernatural, you'll feel right at home on The Crit Show, a Monster of the Week actual play podcast. Follow the hair-raising adventures of three friends tasked with being the last line of defense from the forces of evil that go bump in the night. Find The Crit Show on nerdsmith.org or wherever you get your podcasts.